Some guys think because I'm being honest and transparent, therefore I'm being vulnerable. Actually, not so. If you go to the zoo, maybe I'm looking at the lions through a thick pane of glass. Well, it's transparent, but it's not vulnerable. When we take away the glass and actually come close to the lions, now it's vulnerable. So I think sometimes we can be honest, but still putting up a wall. Hey, my name is Drew Boa, pastoral sex addiction professional, and I am here with some of my friends who do this work together. Let's introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Dr. Doug Carpenter, and I own Insight Counseling Services in northern Detroit.
And I'm Dr. Eddie Caparucci, and I have practice in Highland, North Carolina.
I'm Matt Winger, and I'm the clinical director for Begin Again Institute and Boulder Recovery. I have not written a book, so that's a bummer, I guess. But happy to be here.
You still got time.
Yeah.
We are all about helping men change their brains, heal their hearts, and save their relationships. And one of the most important topics, especially when it comes to marriage, is communication.
Are you sure about that?
I'm pretty sure about that.
Do you really want to talk about that?
You know what? I'm just going to avoid the topic. No, we are
Now
going to
you're
dive
talking
into
like a
this.
man.
Yeah.
Right.
So men often have trouble attuning to the emotions of others, especially the women we love, and they suffer for it.
Well, maybe we should say what attunement is.
Go for it.
So attunement is your ability to understand and connect with another person's emotion, their emotional state, be able to reflect that back to them, be able to understand what they might be feeling and experiencing, and letting them know that you're there with them. And so many men don't know how to attune. They don't know because we have problems understanding and even connecting with our own emotions. Mm-hmm. So how can we do that with another person?
Yeah, and then that goes back to a lot of what happened to us when we were younger, where we didn't get the training and the guidance that we needed to be able to be taught how to attune, how to be empathetic, how to regulate moods and such. So therefore, we're really at a major disadvantage. And, especially with the wives who are looking for that connection, and you can't give what you don't have. Many men are oblivious when it comes to this.
Yeah, and then we end up treating our spouses like we were treated, right? We're going to withdraw from them. We're going to shut down their emotions or, shut down our own emotions if they're starting to feel things. So, yeah, we end up treating them like we were treated because that is what we know. And so, yeah, emotions become a little bit scary at that point in a way.
In order to attune to someone, you have to make yourself vulnerable. And men struggle with vulnerability.
That's a dirty word.
It is a dirty word. It's almost a curse word, right? To make yourself vulnerable, to open up your heart and your mind and your soul to actually connect with another person and for them to see into the window of your soul. That vulnerability is scary.
We feel like we're supposed to be tough, strong, the leaders. And so if my wife tells me, Drew, I need you to be home at 5 o'clock, I'm immediately going into solutions mode and trying to fix the problem rather than wondering, tell me more about that. It sounds like your voice is rising in volume a little bit, that's a little bit of attunement and trying to get to the emotion, right? Not just dealing with the surface level, but getting down to the soul level.
Well, and you said an important phrase, tell me more about that. I think if we as men could just slow down enough sometimes to attune to our wives and just say, tell me more about that. I mean, women already talk more than we do, right?
Yes.
They say, like, how many more thousands of words a day do they say?
Almost twice the amount.
Right, than we do. And sometimes the best thing we can do is just listen and say, tell me more about that. Or, I hear this in your voice. Can you tell me more about what's going on with that?
There's that curiosity that you're talking about, that curiosity that allows us to be able to learn how to sit, listen, attune. Even the idea of, what? I think I hear what you're saying, but can you give me more information because I'm not quite sure, versus just jumping and trying to react to whatever they've said and perhaps getting it wrong.
Yeah, and I think for me and my wife, I'm a therapist, and so if I were to say something like, tell me more about that, she'd probably throw something at me. She'd be like, don't therapize me, right? So and for other men too, it's like I've got to find a way to do that's authentic. And if I not in the phrase, but in the desire to know the other person, to desire to connect with what it is that they're feeling. And that's that, like, I'm not going to fake curiosity and come up with a phrase. I'm actually going to lean in to curiosity. That's easy for us to talk about, but it's hard when the emotion is anger or frustration or being overwhelmed. And do I really want to get curious about that? Or, like I was treated, like, do I want to kind of let them figure it out on their own, and I'll circle back when they've, calmed down?
Right, but that's where women say, he's abandoning me. He's
Right.
not there. He's not there for me. He's not listening to me. And that's all based on fear. Again, that's what that comes down to. We're afraid to go in that direction because what it may do, provoke more dialogue, more conversation, where we're going to feel like we're going to be over our head and we're going to be drowning.
Yeah, what if I say the wrong thing and this all backfires on me?
Yeah.
Versus taking the risk of really being present with our spouse and trying to connect with them.
My friend Nathaniel Gustafson says, jump into the pool of nasty. Don't just stand on the edge of the pool and try to pull the other person out. Jump into the pool with her. That's what we have to learn.
That's great, because I often use a phrase, go hug the porcupine.
These are terrible. Okay, I'm not gonna say my way of looking at it is better. Okay, but it probably is. So no, I'm just kidding. Let's touch in with or get in contact with the part of our maleness, right? That boy in us, that curious man, that curious boy who's running through the forest with his shirt off, wants to see what's around the next corner. Lift up the rock and see what's underneath there. You ever remember that as a kid? You lift up the rock. There's creepy crawlies and the roly polies and the work.
Yep.
Oh man, right? Because what? I want to know my wife.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. I get the metaphor, right? But my wife's emotions isn't a nasty pool
Right.
or a porcupine. Like, actually, she's on the other side of that courage.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it seems intimidating and scary, but when we actually take the leap, what we find is love and tenderness and intimacy. And even if the reaction we get is not what we hope for, we can't control the outcome, but we can control our choices. And I love this idea of looking under the rock, moving toward the other person rather than moving against or moving away.
Right. That's why I try to tell men that emotional intimacy, including that vulnerability, is so much more powerful than physical intimacy. They think I'm out of my mind, okay, until they finally get there and they can do that. Because you're right, when you become vulnerable, which again, that takes that courage, but when you get the response back, one that's validating what you feel, it's like the earth shakes. I mean, you just feel it vibrating throughout your entire body. But it comes back to what you were saying before, look under that rug and look at that, that little boy. But first we have to make sure we're addressing the fears of why I don't want to go back there. Yeah. Why don't I want to see that little boy again? Why don't I want to go and look what's under the carpet?
And I think you're right, Eddie. Like for myself, I grew up in an environment where when I walked in the house, I had to scan the environment to see the kind of mood that my mother was in, and that dictated my behavior. Now, if I grow up as an adult and I walk in the house and I immediately do that to my wife, I could be filled with misinterpretation of what's going on with her or for her, and I have to be careful how I approach that. I can't project my own childhood wounds into my current relationship.
Right, but you have to understand what your childhood wounds
Absolutely.
are. And then again, with what's happening, we're getting triggered. And it's the same thing for our wives. They have their own wounds too, and we trigger those wounds. So that's what we're doing together, and that's why the idea of attachment work is so valuable, because this way we know how we're different, how we're wired in a different way, and now what we can do, we can sit here and say, oh, when I do that, when you walk in the house, you automatically start to get a little tense because that's what used to happen to you. I have to try to make a safe environment for you.
Eddie, one of my favorite insights from you is don't wilt.
Yes.
So sometimes in an effort to try to communicate better or be more sensitive, we can just become a people pleaser and say, "Oh no, you're right. I'm never good enough," and just going along with something passively or withering into our shame, rather than confidently being a container and confidently being able to say, "Yeah, there's space."
We're talking about coping strategies, right?
Yeah.
We come up with so many of them, and you're an expert on coping strategies. Why are you going to tell them why we developed those and what they can be like?
Well, it's because we didn't get the attachment needs met. When a lot of men grow up in homes, especially in America, where emotions weren't valued, nurturing and attunement, like they weren't high priorities. Like we come from generations that were worried about survival, worried about work, worried about providing, right? And your emotions don't matter that much. So caregivers generationally sometimes stopped cultivating the emotional world of the child, leaving the child like, I got to care for myself. I got to figure it out on my own. So I got all this stuff going on inside of me. I got all these fears. I got all these needs that I need to get met from other people. I don't know how to do that. So that's going to leave me open to outside-in coping, alcohol, drugs, sex, these kinds of things. It may even lead me into a dysfunctional relationship with, a romantic partner where like, meet my needs,
Mother me.
Yeah.
Bother me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be my mother. She wants
No.
to be my wife.
Yeah.
But it'll also take you down the path of illnesses too, depression and anxiety and other things that are there. And that's why it's so important. We got to understand what the wounds are, because again, the wives are just frustrated. He won't talk. He won't communicate. There's a reason for it. And you need to be able to help him not understand what that reason is, but to seek the help he needs so that he can. Because again, I go back to the word oblivious. We're oblivious to it. We don't know what we don't know, and we can't give what we don't have.
Yeah, because nobody really cultivated that curiosity in us. So we're not really curious about ourselves. That's why other people's needs kind of freak us out, right? Like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't really know what's going on here, so I don't really know how to help you with it. So the best way for me to handle that is to kind of pretend like it's not happening, and I'll circle back when you're done.
Yeah, how can I attune to you if I don't even know how to attune to myself?
Right.
If I can't identify my own emotions, my own feelings, what's going on with me, how can I have, the inclination of having an awareness of what's going on with you?
Right.
And we as men have to go through a lot of work to get in touch with ourselves and understand what's going on for us.
And a huge part of that, a huge part of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah,
The nonverbal signals,
80%.
right? So if I'm crossing my arms and leaning back, that's saying something. If I'm looking down or off to the side, that's saying something.
If I'm on my phone,
Right.
Yeah.
trying to communicate at the same time.
Yeah.
My wife will tell the story that, I still have this bad habit. That, she'll call, be walking along in the house, and she'll call, Eddie, come here. And I come over, and she'll sit there, and she'll start talking to me, and I'm listening, and I start talking. And as she's talking, I'm turning, and I'm actually walking away. I'm walking away from her.
But
and
that's relatable. We do that all the time, even just on a phone or in our heads.
Right, and again, that becomes lack of mindfulness. And so now I've got myself more in the habit of, she called me, I come in, I sit down.
Yes.
I sit down.
Give
And
all your
orienting
attention.
yourself towards her. So much of the work I do with couples is like they're talking to me in session, and what they need to be doing is talking to each other, right? But they don't even know that they're disoriented, right? That they don't know how to orient their shoulders or their hips or their to face the other person and say something vulnerable. No, I say the vulnerable thing to the therapist. I don't say the vulnerable thing. Okay, why don't you make eye contact with her and then say that thing?
Well, oftentimes in session, I will have them sit across from each other. I will be the third party over here, where they are making that eye-to-eye, body open connection.
The eyes are the window to the soul. And a huge opportunity for vulnerability can just be 1 minute of eye contact with no speaking. So much can be
You're
said.
scaring me.
I dare anyone who's listening to this to try this and not feel closer to the person that you're looking at.
Yeah.
I do this with men in our work together with men. That there's so many layers to that, and ping pong back and forth. Oh, I feel scared, and then I feel seen, and then some of the wounded stuff will come out. I feel rejected, and the other person is accepting that, even though I feel rejected. And now I feel safe. And when we land on safe, it takes like 60 seconds sometimes to get there, but then I didn't even know I could be safe with another person.
We're good.
Especially making eye contact
Yeah.
Yes.
for that to feel safe. We're not a society that makes eye contact
We're down
anymore.
here. We're down
Yes.
here. We're up here. We're there.
Yeah.
What about, we've been talking a lot about guys and how bad we are. What about women? I mean, when it comes to communication, what problems do women sometimes have in communicating, or are they just perfect?
The silence is saying a lot.
Oh, yeah, I can say there's not a brave soul on the
Right.
panel right
Well,
now.
I think sometimes my wife doesn't communicate to me exactly what she needs or what she's
Yeah.
wanting my role to be. So at times I will ask her when she starts talking, okay, that the male part of me may want to jump into fix-it mode, but you may just be wanting me to listen. So sometimes I will have to stop and ask, what is my role in this conversation right now? Are you wanting me to listen? Are you wanting me to be that container? Are you wanting me to offer you suggestions? Like, help me understand what you need from me. One thing that my wife and I have gotten really good at doing is we will just simply ask, what do you need from me? And that has changed our relationship so much. Just when you're unsure, just ask, what do you need from me?
Another one that I love to use, not saying that this is a phrase that you can just whip out like a formula, but as training wheels to get into a rhythm, saying, what's it like for you? What's it like for you when I do that, even though you asked me not to?
That's a good one.
What's it like for you when I'm not listening?
That's such a great question, and that's the scary thing under the rock. I don't want the answer to that question.
right.
I would rather pretend like the answer to that question doesn't exist. So it takes so much courage, and I think that's where this manliness thing comes in. Like so many guys I talk to, they think manliness means shutting down.
Yeah.
But I say, does it take more courage or less courage for you to pursue the answer to questions like that? And they say, oh yeah, more courage every time. So is that the manly thing to do? Well, I guess manliness involves vulnerability then, doesn't it?
And risk.
And
Huge risks.
We need to make a distinction also between transparency and vulnerability. Some guys think because I'm being honest and transparent, therefore I'm being vulnerable. Actually, not so. If you go to the zoo, maybe I'm looking at the lions through a thick pane of glass. Well, it's transparent, but it's not vulnerable. When we take away the glass and actually come close to the lions, now it's vulnerable. So I think sometimes we can be honest, but still putting up a wall. Vulnerability means I'm coming close enough and giving you so much access to me that you can hurt me if you want to. And it opens up the potential for hurt, and it also opens up the potential for healing.
Right. And that's why we have to, as men, constantly be on guard for where are we? We're in that place of vulnerability. Is there the plexiglass that is up right now? Or is it halfway up? How do I bring it down? Why won't I bring it down?
yeah.
Again, I'll go back to that why. Why am I keeping it up there? And being able to, again, that self-reflection that gives us the answer we need, so therefore we can take the risk and step out and be bold.
Yeah, we need to self-reflect on how much connection do we really want? And how much connection do we really need?
I'm not sure we know the answer to that.
Oh, I don't think that we do either.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that takes a lot of
we-
self-reflection.
I mean, men want to, and we are designed by God to be in relationship, okay? To be intimate with others. And again, based on the way we've been hardwired, kind of pulled apart. We need to understand that that is natural. That is what we are aiming for.
Well, you used the phrase to know. I mean, think about that in the early part of the Bible. To know your spouse, it's not just sexually. To know them, to know them intimately on multiple levels. Our desire is to connect and to know our spouse.
And I don't think that's unique for men. I think when we talk about what are the needs for women in communication, or what are the things that they're maybe not doing correctly, let's not miss that women were little girls that grew up in homes that maybe their needs weren't validated either.
Very
right?
much so.
And so we're coming at, a woman might come at their relationship where I'm not going to tell you what my needs are directly because I never had that validated. So my only hope, maybe this little girl hope, is that you would come and rescue me, that you would come and meet my needs, and I wouldn't have to explain it to you.
Yes.
You would see me and come. And there's that room for growth where, like, hey, your needs are worthy of being validated. And if you believe that and can be vocal around that, then you guys can meet better. But if I don't really believe my needs are worthy of validation, I'm not going to speak them. And then self-fulfilling prophecy, they're less likely to get
Right, because
mad.
then we're, I got to read your mind? How am I going to read your mind? I can't read your mind. But if we understand where she's coming from, right?
And even if we don't understand where she's coming from,
Yeah.
and even when I don't know what's going on, but I know something is different,
Guess.
you can guess, or you can just say, it seems like something shifted. Non-judgmental, not assuming I understand everything, and yet humbly, vulnerably saying, I'm showing up.
Yeah. What happened for you there?
Yeah, what happened for you?
What happened? Just talk to me.
I encourage guys to guess too, and I said that, but what I mean by that is one of the biggest tricks in therapy is like guessing what your clients are feeling and getting it wrong, because you think that that's a risk and they're going to disconnect if you get it wrong, but the reality is they're going to tell you what you got wrong, and it works that way in marriage too. Like I'm kind of making up that you're feeling a little stressed or overwhelmed, and like, no, I'm not actually stressed. It's actually more like this. And maybe we don't like the answer, right? It's actually, well, you're not.
Maybe we don't agree with the answer.
Yeah, but we're going to find the answer, right?
Yes.
And let's say she's really activated, right? And say, I'm guessing that you're kind of overwhelmed. And they're going to be like, yeah, right on. Good one, guy. You know what I mean? Like, you should
You're brilliant.
Yeah, you should have been able to tell that by paying attention, right? But, like, if we're guessing, we're risking. And if we're risking, we're being vulnerable. And I think that ends in connection almost every time.
And it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay for there to be a rupture. It's okay for me to get it wrong. It doesn't mean I'm a bad husband. It means that we have an opportunity for repair. And all the attachment research shows that lack of rupture is not the recipe for secure attachment. It's rupture followed by repair.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't have to be perfect every time.
And you can have rupture, repair,
Right.
repair.
And
I mean,
in fact, we all experience viscerally how imperfection is a part of connection. It's hard to connect with somebody who's perfect.
Yeah.
It's hard to connect with somebody who gets it right all the
I
time.
don't get many people who connect with me.
Yeah. You always want to, like a secret that I found out was that a lot of conflict in marriage starts with a negative perception of myself, right? And then, you tripped over it. You see the thing that I hate about myself, and now I'm mad at you for seeing it,
Yeah,
right?
get
But
away.
maybe that didn't occur at all because I've had all these tripwires set up around me that, that I'm not communicating. And the thing is, men are terrified that if they talk too much, then those little secrets are going to come out, that those self-hatreds, those weaknesses, those vulnerabilities.
Goes back to vulnerability.
Right,
Dirty word.
right.
Yeah.
And
Can you imagine what your spouse would feel like if you just walked up to her and said, "Can we just check in with each other?"
You probably think you were a clone or something.
Right,
Like,
an alien. Something like, what happened to my husband? Where did he go?
My wife would think that's normal, man.
Well, high five. Good for
Yeah,
you.
mine too. Okay, but we're therapists and stuff.
Right.
Well, that's
so,
why they're
so we got this
they're
down.
at the end of the
Perfect.
table because that's where they are. You and I are stuck here in the middle because they're far ahead of us.
Yeah, but if you could just say, hey, can we take a moment and just check in? Like, where are you at today? How are you feeling? What's going on for you? And then vulnerably do that to them. Just that can take all of 30 seconds to a minute. And just think about the connection that can create and the safety that can create in your relationship.
Yes, and I would add, similarly to just like a 1 to 5 minute check-in, also physical intimacy disconnected from sex.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Like a little light touching.
Like, how many women have you spoke to who have said, you know what, I don't even want him near me because whenever he comes near me, he's going to hug me, he's going to kiss me, and before you know it, his hands are going to be elsewhere, and he wants to lead the sex.
Yeah.
He can't just do non-sexual touch with me.
Right.
But yet it is so important because physical intimacy, especially in the eyes of a woman, should be built upon. I mean, you're working on it through the course of the day or several days to get her in that place where she goes, ooh, I feel that strong connection.
Yeah, I would like to challenge men to just engage in non-sexual physical touch with your wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just see what that does for your relationship.
And there is an approach called sensate focus, which is all about that. And it can start very small, even just like intentionally, with permission, touching hands. And just being aware of what that feels like.
Yeah, sexual intimacy should be the consummation of emotional intimacy.
Yes.
It's not the definition of intimacy. Sex is not the definition. We use, like, a lot of guys use those terms interchangeably.
Yeah.
Right, but it's not. Right, if I don't have an emotional connection, let me say it this way. I think men actually want this too, because the deepest longing of our heart is to be known and to be loved.
Yes.
And we confuse that with sex, okay? But at our deepest core too, we want to be known and loved and be met in that experience, and consummated in sex, but not defined by sex. We want to be, because, I mean, you get into, prostitution and things like that. That's not fulfilling for men either. They think it is if there's some addiction or dysfunction going on. But at our core too, it's the same. If we can start to validate our own needs around that, it's going to be a lot easier to give out that kind of non-sexual touch, because I'm not like a sex monster, right? I actually have emotional needs too, and I'm going to validate them in approaching you.
But see, again, that goes against what you're talking about with God, what guys do, go against God's design. That, we're building that foundation of a relationship on physical intimacy. And we sprinkle in the emotional intimacy as best as we can, whatever we know, and we have to flip that model.
Yeah.
We have to flip it. It has to be built on emotional. Why do you think in Scripture, we are, told, hey, don't go and engage sexually, okay, before marriage? Because once you start with the sexual aspect, you're starting to kill the emotional development. And so therefore we need to let that emotional development to grow and nurture, which will just make the physical aspect of it even that much more satisfying.
Right, and to speak to your expertise, Eddie, it's what I'm really doing there is I'm inviting that boy to grow up. Right?
Yes.
I'm inviting that boy to
Mature.
Yeah, and what's your thought about that in terms of cultivating the boy so that he can cultivate?
Well, that has to be one of the biggest things that we need to do with men, right? We need to be able to, and when you cultivate that boy, we're understanding, again, what are those wounds that have made me put up those defense mechanisms, those coping mechanisms that you talked about before, and then being able to go in there and start to remove those coping skills. And when I start removing them, which is going to be very scary. Because it's like, trapeze without the net now. Okay, I have no net. That's what it's like.
Yes.
So, but I need to do that. And when that happens, and we're sitting here telling that little boy, hey, you know what? You don't have to make the decision. You don't have to figure out. Being mature enough now, I know and I understand what my wife needs, what she needs from us. And I'm going to deliver that to her. We'll be okay in quieting him down.
Becoming a great communicator in marriage depends largely on our emotional maturity. Being able to know what I'm feeling, identify it, and also being able to receive someone else's emotions.
Yes.
Hold space for them too. That's why emotionally focused therapy is so powerful.
Right, but again, once again, we're going back to the idea, why can't I take on someone's emotion? Fear. Okay, it's fear. I don't know what to do with these, so what do? I run to fix. I go to shut it down by being aggressive. Or I minimize, it's not a big deal.
Or I spiritualize,
right,
slap a Bible verse on it.
Right,
Oh,
or that.
yeah.
Or,
Oh, yeah.
or I don't have time.
Yeah.
I don't have time. And that's it. We just keep running. We just keep running. We're
Yeah,
running.
men, don't be afraid to educate yourself about emotions. Find some books. Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. Like, find some books that will educate you about understanding emotions and how to relate to a female, and then apply those.
Right. Yeah, some guy wrote a book called Why Men Struggle to Love.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder.
I think too, like it gets genderized. Like the emotions are the wife's work, and I'll go to work and I'll provide for the family monetarily, and like leave the emotions to her. She's the tender one. The kids go to her when they're struggling, and I'm the stability. I'm the leader, and the leaders can't show weakness, right? And instead of looking at these things as courageous and scary, and it takes bravery to go chase them down, and I'm gonna lead my family in vulnerability. Like, how different would our childhoods have been if our fathers had led in vulnerability,
Yeah.
rather than just in like monetary, ways,
Right.
I mean, that's like a dream if you think about it in a
Yeah.
way. It's
Yeah.
amazing to do that. But you know what? For you folks out there, you men, you have that opportunity still.
Yeah.
And you need to go again, and to do that self-reflection, you need to go to someone who understands this. You said there are many good resources and books out there, but break the cycle. Break the cycle. Be able to be, instead of, trying to teach your little boys to be tough and rough, which it's okay to have some of that,
But balance.
but there's a balance. Right, there's a balance.
Yeah, just as important as it is to attune and be vulnerable and open with your wife, it's just as much as important that you do that with your children.
Yeah.
So we don't
Yeah.
continue this unhealthy cycle in manhood.
If you grew up in an emotionally empty home where there wasn't a lot of communication, my friend, your brain can change, your heart can heal, you can save your relationships, and I hope some of our advice here has been helpful. Focus on the Family has tons of awesome resources for marriage, communication, parenting, and everything we've been talking about. So check out focusonthefamily.com.